Okay, great. Thank you very much, everybody, for inviting me today's session. Yeah, just a little bit about myself first of all. So I'm Martin Jones, ACA, and also I am in code. I am a codependent. I'm also codependent, a recovering codependent. Today's session, really, what I would like to sort of cover really is talk around about the higher power, really, and step 3 in sort of my sort of difficulties, perhaps following learning to sort of trust the higher power. But what I'm going to do is sort of give hope by sort of talking about my spiritual journey, to help me sort of connect with the higher power. So just to give a bit of an outline of myself. So yeah, so I'm from North Wales originally, in the United Kingdom. I live in London now. I've lived in London for the past 27 years. I'm a 54-year-old male, and yeah, unfortunately, as a child, like most of us, I've had my fair share of abuse. My father sexually abused me as a child from the age of 8 to 16, and I also have. He was also emotionally and physically abusive, so I had the whole triple whammy, really, if you like, which wasn't great. And what I used to find was, especially with the sexual abuse, what I used to find was that it would happen when my mother was at work. And in relation to the higher power, I'd always sort of had a connection with God in a way. And it's probably a naive view of what it was as a young child, but I used to pray to God when my mother went to work at night. I used to pray to God, oh, please don't let my father come in to my room. And yeah, it didn't happen all the time, but yeah, once is enough, but it was more than once, lots of times. And often my father would still come into the room despite sort of praying to the higher power. So I sort of felt very betrayed by God. By the time I was sort of 16, I sort of really thought, there can't be, how can there be a higher power when this type of, if he's not listening, he or she or they aren't listening to my prayers, and I still to this day struggle with that one, really, but I'll come to that later, actually, in terms of how I've rationalized with that. I'm just making a few notes because I will talk about my experience in Jordan on that. So, what happened was, so yeah, I had a bit of a fractured relationship with the higher power at 16. From 16 onwards. I was also subject to sort of narcissistic, well, it's all narcissistic abuse, really, but I had to sort of leave home at 16 because I wanted to do my A levels, but my father told me I was too stupid to be able to do A levels, um, so I had to sort of try and think of an alternative on how I could sort of get out of that family home, basically, and also progress my career. So at 16, or 16 and a half, I joined the army, and I joined a medical corps, and I was going to be a pharmacy technician. In school, I sort of gravitated toward chemistry, and I was getting good grades in chemistry, but like I said, I wasn't allowed to do further education, so I had to go think of another route. So the army, I was in the army cadets. I sort of enjoyed the army cadets, then joined the army. But the problem is with me, I think, because I was so broken inside, or sort of lack of confidence, I then came out of the army 16 months later because I was sort of being bullied in the army. I passed the basic training, but just all I think I always liken people, really, some people can really pick up on those wounds and really go for you, and that's what certainly happened to me. Only sort of verbal abuse, but still painful. When I left the army, I became a plumber. Somebody told me as I was leaving the army, make sure you get a trade. So I became a plumber for 9 years, and then I always had that urge, that burning voice inside, thinking, oh, you know what, your father told you you're too stupid to do your A levels and your degree. So I thought, I really want to go and do a degree. Somebody helped me to be able to do that in terms of trying to research of what I wanted to do, because I wasn't sure exactly what subject I wanted to do. Anyway, I came into dietetics for dietitian, so it's about nutrition, and I went to London. The other thing as well to know about really me was I was identified as being gay as well, and and London was really the place to be, really, to go and explore your sexuality. North Wales certainly wasn't the place to go to explore the sexuality. So it was almost like killing two birds with one stone, so to speak. Go and do my degree in London, plus also explore my sexuality, like, you know. Anyway, I passed my degree and I came out with first class honours back in 2002, and I've worked in healthcare ever since. I've held down a full-time job as a diabetes dietitian, although the last couple of years I've been doing patient safety. I've had changed my role a bit. So yeah, so from a career perspective, really, I've not done too badly. I've got a, yeah, I've also, you know, got my own home and all that type of stuff. But one thing which was a problem really, which wasn't really addressing, so this is all external stuff. I was trying to fix my internal by trying to fix the external, which of course we all know doesn't really work, because what had happened was I was getting into some relationships. My first long-term relationship was, I think, when I was 28. No, sorry, later than that, I was 32. Yeah, and it finished when I was 38. Um, and he definitely didn't believe in the higher power. So I sort of it reinforced that not to believe in the higher power. So we split up in 2008, basically, when I was 38 years old, and it was then I realized, then I started understanding really what abandonment wounds were, issues were, but I still didn't really work on it that much. I had some dependency, what do you call it? Not, I wouldn't say addiction so much. I stayed away from drugs, but I did like alcohol, but I wouldn't say I was an alcoholic, but I was doing all the silly, my biggest thing really was sex, really, sexaholic, really. And it happens a lot in the gay world, actually, gay men sleeping around a lot, you know, so I was very much like that. But now in my working the steps, I realized that what I was really doing is with sexuality was sort of looking at using sex really for two reasons, really. Number one was to try and release the stress. I realized that if I was getting stressed and anxious about things, I have ADHD, for example, I'd use sex. That would be my go-to. But the other one as well, for validation as well. So it's almost like seeking the love which I never got from my father. Now I know you don't have sex with your father, but what I did in my younger mind at 8 years old, to sort of, when my father was doing the things he did to me, I used to sort of compensate by pretending I was having sex with people I liked. And I always say with sexual abuse, it was like sort of like having cocaine really at a very young age. It was sort of, sex to me really was like sort of, because I really enjoyed the sensation and I was hunting the sensation, but obviously not for my father. I would go cottaging, which is a slang word for looking for sex in public toilets, that type of thing, which was very dangerous when you think at 8 years old onwards. It was a very dangerous thing to do, really. So it was, so that's what I want to sort of just give you sort of an outline of what's happening on the exterior, like, you know. So the interior, I believe that in a way that God, and it's a funny sort of concept, isn't it? Was higher. I'll use the word higher power actually. Um, the higher power, I believe, was always there for me, and it sort of came to me round about bigger when I started realizing consciously that there was something strange happening in my life. Was after my second relationship breakdown in 2015. I married this guy from Pakistan. Did a lot of help. Again, like the typical thing which people in the ACA do, I did myself, was try to rescue somebody. So this guy, he was a nice guy actually, to be honest with you, but he was on a student visa in the UK, and we sort of got together, and he said, "Well, would I marry him?" I said, "Yes," to help him get a visa. So he became a British citizen. We were together for 5 years. I think love was there, but didn't have that trust in it, like, you know. So I was cheating, he was doing silly things as well, like, you know, and it split up, like, you know. But that's when the massive abandonment wound really came, because by that time I was sort of 45, was I? Yeah, 45 then. And it was that thing, oh my God, I'm 45. I'll never find anybody again to love me, or I'll never have sex again. Like, you know, all those really negative, dark thoughts. And it's really, yeah, I really had to face those abandonment issues, like, you know. Anyway, this is when the sort of higher power, I believe, well, I became more conscious of the higher power, so to speak. So what happened was I started getting like very unusual coincidences or synchronicities. I think Carl Jung describes them as, and I first started noticing I properly crashed, for 2015. I was in a real mess. I lost loads of weight. I couldn't eat. I felt really suicidal. I felt really crashed, properly crashed, in a proper mess. So anyway, amongst this nonsense going on in my mind, there was I saw a lot of I had some friend network there, who was able to pick me up. They weren't long lasting, but they lasted enough while I was going through a real crisis. And I noticed with him, or these guys, I was hanging around with, this stuff was coming up, from us, from the inner world, if you like. And I started noticing these things like meditation came up a few times, and I wasn't really doing that, so I thought, I better take notice of this. So yeah, that's one thing which I did, so I thought, it's interesting, this and then I went to a few Buddhist things, that type of thing, and I felt it was working to an extent. Of course, it doesn't cure everything, and you have to be consistent, So this went on for a while. I did a bit of meditation, and then I started then I was into psychotherapy at this time as well. And then there's one day, I don't know if people know London here, I don't know if anybody from London, but I used to go to Richmond to go and have my psychotherapy every week for the child abuse thing, and I used to cycle. I still do cycle, and we were cycling back home one day, and I stopped in Brompton Cemetery, and it's a bit of a cruising site, really. So again, I was trying to act out. I didn't have any sex that day or anything like that, but I was very much. I thought, what the fuck am I doing? What the hell am I doing? In this place, I I just Googled, the word help, in the Google search. I just need some support here, and it came. I saw this guy called Muji. He came up on the search bar, and he I don't know, it's hard to describe it. So Muji is these gurus, and he was from London, and he'd gone to find he's gone to seek the truth, if you like, a truth seeker. And he found somebody called Papaji, and he's a devotee of somebody called Ramana Maharshi. He's a great saint who died in 1950, and I felt very much gravitating towards that. I don't know what it was, but I was gravitating to that. And I used to listen to his talks, really. And basically, what his talks was something called self-inquiry. And it was talking about, really, what the thing is, really, is that you're not your body, you're not your mind, and it's teaching you to ask the question, who am I? So when a thought comes up, rather than trying to battle a thought, just try and be with the thought and think, okay, who am I? So self-inquiry is a type of meditation, but not, so to speak, because what Ramana Maharshi says is actually trying to control a mind is like trying to control a herd of wild elephants, which I've never tried doing. I'm sure probably not many people have tried that either here. So it's but I can imagine it would be very difficult. So what Ramana Maharshi would say is okay, when thoughts arise, when things arise, just be with the mind and try and see the mind as a bull, and with sweet grass, you try and tempt the bull into the field, and eventually what will happen is the mind will come back to its source, and the source is the heart, basically. And it's really about sort of just trying to recognize it's a help. You're not trying to do anything, really. What's happening is that the mind will eventually come back to the source, because it's no longer identifying with all these what do you call them, concepts, such as I'm a man, or I'm gay, or I am a a dietitian, because they are all external concepts, really. The true consciousness really is not about that. It's about that inner thing inside us, So I've been really helped by that, like a lot, like, and I remember this is back in 2016 when it sort of started coming up, and I've had loads of weird stuff since then. Like, I'm not going to sort of bore you with all the details, but there's a few significant things I'd like to sort of cover in this session. And one of them was I have to just stop a little bit here because I do emotion comes up. So anyway, one day when I was in my mess, I'd get this sort of mental, I'm sure, well, I can only describe it really as sometimes you have those good days and bad days. When you have those bad days, the mental anxiety is too much, like, and I remember tidying my bedroom and I was listening with this Muji. He used to do sing these called these bhajans, like, I don't know what people know what bhajans are. Basically, it's singing like religious Hindu songs to the gods, like, Anyway, so the Muji songs were very nice. So Muji's got like a following, like, and he's got these people who play the bands and music, very beautiful music. Anyway, um, there was one who was singing like Om Namah Shivaya, which is a Hindu god. Anyway, I can remember very clearly in the bedroom just listening to that, like, and then suddenly these tears came, like, I thought, wow, what is this, like, because I'd never heard of Shiva. I didn't know what Shiva was, like, I said Shiva is a Hindu god, like, or their interpretation of the higher consciousness or the higher power. And these tears were just flowing from me. I'd never heard of Shiva before, like, I didn't know what Shiva was, like, And so there was something which was really releasing inside me, and I don't know what it was, like, to this day, there was something really powerful. And I still chant to this day like that Dutiv Kirtan. Anyway, so that was one significant thing. I thought, there's something in this, like, so and I'd like sort of weird stuff happen to me. Like, so for example, my friend who she doesn't believe in God whatsoever, like, but he knew that I like this type of stuff. And one day he likes to go to the charity shops. And one day he brought me this this ornament, like, he says, oh, I've got you this ornament from the charity shop. And it was a Durga. And Durga is also a Hindu god, but it's the feminine side of Shiva. And I thought, wow, it's interesting, isn't it? Like, and it's about cleansing negativity, really. But at the same time, what I was also doing was this is what we call the shaking meditation, and it's as we're under a guru in 2016 as well called Ratu Bagus, and it's in he's now died as well. Actually, just died recently, but he does this shaking practice in Bali, and how this is another weird story about synchronicity. So I was going on a yoga holiday in Sri Lanka back in 2016, around about that sort of time, 17 maybe. And just as on the plane, my friend called Becky phoned me, and she's, oh no, where was I? No, I think he had gone to Jordan. And my friend Becky says, while I was on the plane boarding Jordan, she said, going to Jordan. She said, oh, do you fancy going to Sri Lanka in a few months' time? I thought, oh, I can't, Becky. I'm just on my way to Jordan. Like, you know what I mean? I can't really, I can't afford it. I thought, oh, do you know what? To hell with it. I'm going to go to Jordan, to Sri Lanka on a yoga holiday. And we did, and I was reading this book called Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. I don't know if you've heard of him, and I'm not sure if I'm allowed to give book recommendation. I'm not giving a book recommendation. I'm just saying what this part of the story. Anyway, um, we landed in Sri Lanka those 3 months later, and I was reading this book called Neil Donald Walsh, and he talked about the synchronicities as well, like, and I met this guy while I was on the beach just before the yoga holiday started. This guy was on yoga holiday too, and we just bumped into each other. And the book was the if you like, the precipice for us to start a conversation. Oh yeah, I know about Neil Donald Walsh, and I know about his book. It's very good. And he says, "Oh, have you heard of something called Ratu Bagus?" Like, I thought, "No, what? I thought, what is that? I don't know what that is." Like, And so it's about a shaking meditation practice. This guru from Bali does a shaking meditation. So okay, so it sounds interesting. Like, I don't know what it is. And he says, "Oh yeah, he was from London too." But so yeah, there are a couple of venues in London where this happens. Like, so it's just like yoga, but it's just another practice. Like, and he says, when I said, where is the other practice? And he says, oh, it's in Archway in North London. I said, oh, that's funny. That's where I live. Like, and bear in mind, I think there was only two venues in the whole of London, and London's a massive big city, as I'm sure you're all aware. And it just happened to say that this practice was literally the road across. Yeah, so basically it was on the next road to where I lived. I thought, wow, that now if that's not a synchronicity, if that's not the higher power helping me, then what the hell it isn't? Like, what the hell is, I don't. It was too beyond a synchronicity. So I went to this Ratu Bagus, and it was really, it's been good. It's a hard practice because you've got to sort of shake. You sing the Gayatri mantra, which is a Hindu mantra, like, and it's about a practice which tries to get you out of your mind, really. And you're not doing anything real. You allow the body to do its stuff, like. But as you can imagine, if you're shaking for a 1 hour session, it can be quite sort of challenging and taxing, sort of to still the mind. So I've been doing that really on and off. I've not been that consistent with it. I've started up again really recently out of necessity because I thought, the mind has got really probably out of control at the moment. I just feel like I've got to really sort of, step up the mark with that, really be more consistent. And it is helping, but I mean, that was a really interesting thing. And I know I was going to say at the start about the Jordan trip. So that was another really interesting thing. Like, oh yeah, that is interesting. I'm going to take it back a little bit. Um, so part of this spiritual journey take it back to around about sort of 2015, 14, 15. And I met this Irish guy, there's a lot of Irish people in London, called Eamon. And he was a lovely friend of mine, like, still is a friend of mine. And he was a ex-Catholic, I can't remember which monk order he was in. Yeah, I always forget the name. But anyway, he was in an order in in Ireland, and he left it in 1982. We came to London. We became friends. We met through five rhythms dancing, and we went on a holiday together back to his hometown in Donegal, like, just because he knew I was struggling. Like, so he's one of my sort of life support people, really, who really helped me. Stood by me ever since. Well, we've helped each other, really. It's not been a one-way process, but we went down to, and it was interesting because in Ireland, there was a particular event there where we walked to the beach and we walked past an old church with the cemetery there, like, and I read one of the tombstones took me by surprise, not surprise, but it took my attention, and on the tombstone read a poem, and I can remember the poem quite well, and basically it says, "Stop, stranger, as you see me now, soon shall you will be. So prepare now for your eternity." And I thought it's quite profound. That's quite a profound poem on a set. I think I've never seen that poem before. Interesting, Right. So this is the weird stuff, like, now, like, yeah. So what I said about Jordan. So I took a cycle trip to Jordan, and again, I just let the universe do it for me. I thought I wanted to go on holiday, and just I saw this leaflet on the one work table saying Jordan with Expedia giving £200 off. I thought, yeah, go for it. It's a cycle holiday full of very sort of big ego cyclists. So it wasn't a spiritual holiday. And it was to visit all the cycling around Jordan, seeing the sites, Petra, Little Petra, etc. Like, Anyway, cycling one day, and we'd done the big Petra, and there's a little Petra by there as well, little Petra. And the guide was a Muslim, quite religious, but he wasn't, he wasn't ramming it down our throats. But he took us to his cave, like, obviously very old cave as they are. And he said, right, just sit down here a minute, just sort of have a bit of silence. He didn't mention the word meditation. Anyway, we sat there just in silence for about 2 or 3 minutes. And then he said, then, and I can't remember much context he said it, but he then recited that same poem which I'd seen on that tombstone in Donegal 3 months earlier. And when he said it, I just felt this real sort of jolt of, I don't know, electric, I would say, in my spine, go to my head. It was like a real boom. And it was like, wow, what is that like? I don't know what it was, but it was almost like, to me, how my reflection on it all now is that I have to sort of take this seriously. I have to sort of, the preparing for your eternity, because the consciousness, from my understanding, is the conscious never dies, the soul never dies. Like, the body and mind dies, but the preparation for the eternity is very important. So it's not sort of, I don't think it's a concept of heaven and hell. It's not about that, but I think it's about really that I can't explain it. I don't know, like, but what I do know is that this stuff needs to be taken seriously for me. Like, I felt that I have to really take this stuff seriously. And maybe it's something, maybe that God or the higher power, whatever you want to call it, just did hear those prayers years ago, like, and thought, right, I'm going to help this person, like, perhaps for some reason he couldn't help me when I was a kid. I don't know, like, but it was a real connection to that, really, which helped me, I think, maybe in the later life. I was going to say something else then about that, but it was just, that was really interesting, really, how that sort of came about, that preparing for the eternity. I know that some, I don't sort of go into the philosophy at all, but I think that, this reincarnation stuff, I don't know, like, but what I just do know is that I had to sort of take this seriously, like, and the universe there, I think, is there to try and help as best it can. I don't know, like, but I think for me, it's that really sort of trying to believe that there is something bigger than me. But what I still do find to this day on the third step is really that trusting. So even though I know there's a higher power, I just feel it. I do find it's hard to trust God and let go. Like, I find that really difficult, but it's a work in progress, isn't it? As we know, but I think all this experience I've had over the, say, last 10 years really has helped me, I think, because I was in a, suicidal state probably 10 years ago, but now I'm in a much better state. Yeah, it's still a struggle, as it is for most people, but I do find that, yeah, there's hope now, because I think what's been revealed to me is that, yeah, there is something bigger than this little me, if you like, this little ego, this ego. There's something much, much bigger than this, and it's really trying to sort of just try and trust that and go with that. I think I don't want to sort of, yeah, I don't want to sort of overwhelm, really. I think those are the most sort of powerful things I want to say to you, really. I mean, I do go to India. Um, I do go to the Arunachala, which is in Tiruvannamalai. It's a mountain it's a holy mountain in South India. I go there regularly. The last time I went was in October, and yeah, always get powerful stuff from happening from there. So one thing, yeah, actually, is interesting actually as well. I think I've still got time. One thing about that really was about, yeah, interesting. So I don't know if you guys get this, but what I find is that I'm very averse to oppression and abuse. So if I see it, I can get very, very angry in my mind, like, so much so I can have these really murderous thoughts. Rest assured, I've never murdered anybody, or I'm not going to, but it's just, I can get real anger, like, and hatred in my head, like, and one day when I was in Arunachala in October, it was when the Gaza thing happened. I think it's just and I felt myself feeling sort of real hatred to what had happened. And I just allow myself just to feel that real feelings, that hatred, like, and I had this vomiting process, which was almost like purging out, like, it was only lasted about 4 hours, and the next day I was fine, I was better, like, it was almost like, but in that night I had a dream, and it was sort of a powerful sort of visualization dream, whatever you want to call it. And it was about that thing, like saying that basically two wrongs don't make a right, that, if I was to act out on those feelings, I wasn't going to, but if I was to act out on those feelings, then all I'm doing is adding to the trauma. And yeah, and I know that, but it was a good reminder, yeah, I know what I was going to say to you as well about Jordan. So just, I know I'm jumping a bit around a little bit, but when I was in Jordan, actually, when I was in Petra, I sort of just prayed to God. I says, God, why is all this suffering? Like, what's all this suffering about in this world? And the answer came back to me. I just had it from a feeling, and basically, what the answer really what came back to me says, look, there always has been and always will be suffering on this world. Like, your job really on this planet is to not add to the suffering, basically try and take away, like, I thought that was really interesting insight. So, of course, this is where the two wrongs don't make a right come into, because obviously, if we go and act out on those feelings, act out on those trauma, then, yeah, I'm just going to basically be adding to the nonsense of the world rather than taking away. So I think I'm going to leave it there, actually. I think I've done a lot of talking there, thrown a lot of information at you. Um, so, yeah, I'm not sure what happens now, whether you ask me any questions or I don't know. I'll leave it there. Thank you.